You are already dead. That is the first line written in the Forbidden Book, the sentence that no living reader expects to see. This is a record of what begins in the very instant your lungs collapse and your final breath escapes. This book is said to come from hidden traditions in Japanese mythology, where death is a passage carefully recorded by spirits. It claims to reveal, minute by minute, what your soul experiences once your heart falls silent, and it insists that knowledge itself carries a curse. In the first minute after death, your consciousness does not vanish. You still hover close to your body, pulled upward, yet tethered like a weightless shadow. You see the shape that once belonged to you, pale skin draining of warmth, lips beginning to tighten, eyes open yet empty. The Forbidden Book describes this moment with merciless clarity, telling how the soul feels the room darken, as though unseen hands dim the light around your corpse. According to its pages, the silence grows louder, pressing against your ears, and the faint echo of your own fading heartbeat still vibrates inside your skull. The Shinigami, the death gods of Japanese belief, do not rush forward. They arrive to watch. They stand at the edge of the scene, their outlines shifting like figures behind smoke, their eyes glimmering like drops of oil on water. They wait, patient and cold, to see if you will realize what has happened. The book warns that in this first minute, you will try to move, to scream, to cling to your chest as if your heart could be restarted. But the soul has no lungs, no voice, no strength. It floats above its own shell, forced to stare at the stillness it cannot undo. The skin grows paler, and the lips curve slightly as if mocking you, a mask of flesh abandoned to decay. Shadows gather unnaturally in the corners of the room, thick and deliberate, not the play of light, but the arrival of something intelligent. The book emphasizes that this stage is not yet release. The Shinigami lean forward, not to claim, but to measure. They sense the weight of your sins, the density of your fears, the smell of your regrets. They are silent assessors, cataloging you as a butcher inspects meat before deciding how to cut. And you can feel them. Not see, not hear, but feel their hunger simmering. 1 minute is long when it stretches into eternity. Your soul hovers, your corpse stiffens, and the air grows heavier with every heartbeat that no longer exists. The book makes clear that what you witness now is only the opening page, the first glimpse into an endless sequence. If this first minute already breaks the mind, the book warns you should not keep reading. Yet the book turns its own page, and it insists on telling what happens next. 10 minutes after death, the Forbidden Book says the quiet breaks in the most dangerous way, not with sight, but with sound. You hear your name carried by familiar mouths, the cadence of a mother, the laugh of a child, the low reassurance of a friend. Yet each voice is stretched as if shouted from the end of a tunnel filled with water. According to Japanese mythology, this is a lure woven by the Shinigami, a net made of memory. They do not pull the soul by force. They invite it to step forward by offering what it already longs to hear. The book warns that you will turn toward the calling and find no speaker, only corners that seem deeper than the room could possibly hold. Then comes the second trial, the mirror that is not a mirror. In the old rites, mirrors are sacred because they reflect essence rather than surface, and the greatest of them, the Yata no Kagami, is said to reveal truth without pity. Now, in this 10th minute, you search for any surface that will anchor you. A window pane, a metal plate, the black center of a pupil, even a puddle of water blooming under the table. Nothing returns you. The air feels like glass, and the world becomes a chamber of reflections that refuse to answer. You lift a hand, and it passes through light like smoke. The book explains that this empty reflection is deliberate. The Shinigami starve you of your own image, so that the only shapes left to trust are the ones they choose to show. The voices continue, softer, kinder, asking you to follow. And when you try to speak back, the words fall out of you without sound and sink into the floor as if language has weight. Every regret you carried in life presses forward like a fingerprint smudged on unseen glass. And for a moment, you understand why mirrors were kept in shrines, why they were wrapped when not in use, why priests warned that a stained heart stains its own reflection. You reach again for anything that answers back, and the room shifts, not by moving walls, but by thinning distance. The familiar chair is suddenly far, the doorway suddenly narrow, as if the world is folding to guide you toward the darker end. You know you should resist. You know the voices are bait, but the absence of yourself is worse than the fear of pursuit. That is when the book says the invisible mirror finally forms. It is not on a wall. It is in the air ahead, a cold oval that drinks light. You step closer because something must prove that you still exist. The surface brightens, a shape gathers, and when the reflection finally appears, it does not show your face. 30 minutes after death, the Forbidden Book says the world has finished closing its doors and the last hinge is soundless. Sight is stripped away, and what remains is a darkness that does not feel like night, but like substance thick enough to press against your face. There is no floor under you and no ceiling above you, only a slow rocking that mimics breath you no longer have. Then the first eye opens. It does not arrive with light. It arrives as a shape that rejects the dark around it, a round disk with a wet shine, as if a coal had learned to stare. Another opens, then another, and 100 more, arranged at different depths like lanterns suspended over a black lake. Each one reflects something you do not want to see. A broken promise repeated until it becomes habit. A kindness withheld because it cost pride. A lie told to move a burden from your shoulders to someone else. The eyes do not blink at the same time. Some have round pupils, some are slits, some are ringed as if grown in coral. They study you the way crows study a field after the plow turns the soil, patient, methodical, certain that what they want will rise. According to Japanese belief, the restless dead called yurei feed on the heat of regret, and in this 30th minute you feel that hunger draw near. The eyes are their mouths and their hooks. When you recoil from one memory, 3 more eyes brighten, tasting the fear that leaks from you. The Forbidden Book explains that the darkness is not empty space, but water without temperature, and the eyes ride its surface like embers on a lake. Each ember throws a faint ripple, and those ripples touch your outline and map you. Where you are weakest, the ripples linger. Where you are strongest, they thin. The yurei drift behind the eyes, outlines that never become bodies, long hair that hangs as if underwater, arms that seem too far to reach you until you notice how quickly the ripples shorten the distance. You try to shut your own eyes and find that you have none to close. You try to turn away and learn that direction belongs to the living. So you hold still, and the eyes come closer anyway. Some focus tight on a single fault until it fills your whole perception. Others widen and show a doorway, a room, a face you know, and tilt the scene just enough to make you feel you could step back into it if you surrendered the little strength you have left. The book warns that this is the moment when most souls begin to bargain, not with words, but with posture, curling inward as if smaller shape means smaller guilt. The eyes do not sympathize. They compare, they weigh, they judge. One eye swells until it becomes a mirror without glass, and you lean toward it because anything that returns an image is proof that you still exist. What looks back is not a face, but a contour made of dim light, a human outline crowded by shadows that do not belong to you. The ripples tighten. The water that is not water rises to your chest, though you have no chest. The eyes advance in rows like soldiers who never learn to stop. You feel a disturbance in the black behind you, a slow pressure that folds the dark into a narrower path. When yurei have found a trail, they do not drift aimlessly. They follow. And in this moment, you understand you are not alone. Exactly 1 hour after death, the Forbidden Book describes the appearance of a guide. Until this point, the Shinigami have been distant watchers, hovering at the edges, measuring. But now one of them steps forward. Some stories say it is a Shinigami in its familiar shape, robed and faceless, eyes glowing like cracks in burnt stone. Other accounts claim the guide is older, a deity of shadow, born long before the name Shinigami was whispered, a figure whose silence outweighs sound. No matter the form, the guide arrives with the certainty of a sentence being read, and the world of darkness begins to shift. The book says the ground appears beneath your feet for the first time since your death, but it is not soil. It is rough, uneven, brittle, and it leads toward the sound of moving water. You follow, not because you choose to, but because the current of that black space folds around you and funnels you forward. Soon you reach it, the river that separates the dead from what lies beyond. This is the Sanzu River, a boundary as final as the Styx in Greek tales. It is wide, its surface dull and opaque, its banks choked with mist that carries the voices of those who drowned. The water smells of iron and ash. The book explains that the soul does not decide how to cross. The method of passage is dictated by the weight of your life. Those whose deeds were clean walk a narrow but solid bridge, thin as a thread, yet strong enough to carry them. Those whose actions were stained must wade into the current, and the river swallows them to the chest, pulling with hands of mud, each step heavy as punishment. The worst are forced to crawl over jagged stones that slice their feet and hands, leaving trails of blood that attract shapes beneath the surface. You do not choose which path you take. The river decides for you. The guide watches without comment, eyes locked on your suffering, but never lifting a hand to ease it. Around you, other souls appear, each assigned their own path. Some shuffle across the bridge trembling. Others choke as the water drags them under. Others scream as the stones tear their bodies open, even though they are already dead. You realize this is not a place of mercy, but of judgment carried out through terrain itself. The Forbidden's book lingers on the sound, the crunch of bone on stone, the sucking pull of mud, the gurgling cries swallowed by the river, and it says the Sanzu does not care who you were, only what weight you carried. You try to move faster, but every step is bound to the rhythm of your life. Regrets pull you down, cruelty drags like lead, selfish choices open the stones sharper. For those who try to cheat, the river has its own executioners. Pale hands burst from the water, gripping ankles, dragging bodies into depths where no bridge or stone can be seen again. And still the guide waits at the far bank, unmoving, until you finally stumble to the other side. You have crossed the Sanzu, but the book insists this is not release. The river is not an end, only a border. The guide raises its hand, and behind it another horizon forms, darker than the one you left. The book closes this section with a warning. The crossing is not the end. It is only the first portal. The Forbidden's book says that once the soul has crossed the Sanzu River, time no longer flows in minutes, but in days, each marked by judgment. For 7 days, the dead are led before 7 judges, each seated behind mirrors that cannot be deceived. These are not mirrors of glass or silver, but surfaces that drink light and pour it back as essence. On the first day, the mirror shows you what you believed about yourself. It plays your kindness, your sacrifices, the words you repeated to justify your actions. Yet the judge watches without expression, because the mirror does not stop there. On the second day, the mirror reveals what others felt when you touched their lives. The generosity you thought went unnoticed, the cruelty you imagined forgotten, the betrayals that never left their victims. Each face peers out from the surface, lips mouthing truths you cannot deny. The third day shows every choice you made in secrecy, the decisions taken when you thought no one was watching. The Forbidden's book warns that this is the mirror that breaks most souls, because secrets are carried like stones. And here each one drops onto your shoulders until you bend beneath their weight. On the fourth day, the mirror twists your regrets into shapes that move. Figures step out, whispering questions that have no answers. Why did you abandon them? Why did you strike? Why did you lie? They advance, and the more you retreat, the more they multiply. The fifth day is when the protectors appear. In Japanese mythology, Jizo Bosatsu are guardians of souls, especially of children and of those lost between worlds. They hold staffs and wear red bibs, symbols of compassion. Some souls look upon them and weep with relief, believing they will be lifted away. But the book insists that even Jizo cannot carry those who are crushed beneath unbearable guilt. They can guide, they can soothe, but they cannot rewrite what the mirrors show. On the sixth day, the mirror ceases to reflect you at all. Instead, it shows what you could have been if every path had bent differently. A better parent, a kinder friend, a braver lover, a wiser leader. These shapes are not offered as comfort, but as accusation. The gap between what you were and what you might have been becomes a wound. And finally, on the seventh day, the last judge lifts the darkest mirror. In it, there is no self, no memory, no echo of possibility. It reflects only emptiness, and the soul feels itself begin to hollow. The Forbidden Book says that some dead never leave this seventh day. They fall into the mirror, trapped in infinite cycles where each reflection swallows the last, a prison of their own absence. There are tales in Japanese belief of spirits who linger at crossroads or near shrines, not because they were denied rebirth, but because they never escaped their own reflections, circling them endlessly until their names are forgotten. For 7 days, the soul is stripped bare, judged, and reshaped, yet the book warns that even this ordeal is not the final terror. And still, it turns its page, whispering of something worse than the judges themselves. For it says the silence that comes after them is far more terrible. The Forbidden Book forbids the last page, yet the hand that holds it turns anyway. In what waits, there is not a vision, but an erasure. After 7 days of being weighed, until you have no posture left to hide behind, the guide does not return. No footsteps approach, no voice names you. There is only a silence that is not the absence of sound, but the absence of being heard. A pressureless void, where even thought has no edge to strike. This is the punishment reserved not for the wicked alone, but for the unbound, the dead who receive no rites, no incense, no name tablet on any household altar. Without a rite, there is no thread to pull you back toward the living, no priest to speak for you, no family to steady the bridge, and the soul drops beneath the map of paths that lead to rebirth. The book says you try everything you have learned since death began. You reach for a reflection to confirm that you still exist, but there is no surface here, and therefore nothing to return your shape. You listen for the river, but water belongs to those who can still cross, and all crossings are now behind you. You call for the judge, for the weight, for the pain of stones, for anything that at least answers, but the silence swallows each attempt without echo, as if the effort of speech dissolves the instant it leaves your will. The world does not darken, because there is no world left. Instead, there is blankness like paper that refuses ink. In shrines on the mountain roads, small statues of Jizo Bosatsu wear red bibs and caps, guardians who are said to comfort those who walk alone between realms. In life, you may have seen travelers straighten those garments, set pebbles at Jizo's feet, whisper a promise for the lost. Here the book insists that even Jizo cannot find you, because finding requires direction and direction requires a relation, and the unrighted dead have none. Without a memorial day, without hands to press together and speak your name on the first seventh day or the seventh day, without grain set out or a bell rung, you slide past the places where compassion gathers and sink into the scene that runs between all realms. No god turns to look. No ancestor recognizes your scent. The Forbidden Book explains that this silence is heavier than water, colder than stone, longer than judgment, and that it empties not only the future, but the past, because to be unremembered is to have every trace of your footsteps brushed smooth. The soul waits for hunger or fear or pain, because even suffering would prove that something can still touch it, but nothing comes. Time unhooks. The left hand forgets the right. The memory of your own face loosens and drifts until even the attempt to recall it becomes shapeless. Some myths say the unrighted wander as yurei, scratching at doors and fogging mirrors, begging for a rite that will fix them to a name. The book's last page denies even that. It offers only a silence so complete that it cancels the desire to be heard. It is the end of being pointed at by any light. It is the end of being included in the count of the dead. The book closes on its own with the gentle finality of a gate that was always meant to shut, and the space it seals cannot be forced again from the other side. According to Japanese belief, the worst fate is not fire or blade or 1,000 years of penance. It is to fall outside the circle of rites and memory, where there is no path back to the wheel and no path forward to awakening. The Forbidden Book calls this the last lesson and refuses to explain further.